Alright. My Refutation speech is on sustainable neighborhoods, and their major claim was that their main claim was modern neighborhood lacks sustainable characteristics. And the problem with this claim is that it's sort of ambiguous, and in the word sustainable, because sustainable could also mean green building, which is like solar panels and reusable water and like low electricity lighting. But he backs up his main claim, the secondary claims that we are running out of room, our independence is inefficient, our lack of trust in neighborhoods hinders our ability to serve each other in times of need. The first secondary claim, we're running out of room. He has a statistic that says 7 to 11 million new residents will move into the housing market in 20 years, but there's no actual evidence or source given. There's also another example is that he says home sizes are increasing while the amount of people are actually decreasing. But in an article in the Washington Times, in February 2008, a survey by the National Association of Home Builders said that potential home buyers, 60% of the potential home buyers responded that they'd rather have a smaller house. And also in the article, it said there was a trend leaning towards smaller houses because smaller houses are cheaper to build, so therefore more affordable in these kind of tough times. Their secondary claim is that our independence is inefficient. He has a quote from Stephen Covey that through trustful communication, we find ways to leverage differences to create a whole that is greater than the sum of its parts. The problem with this quote is that it's contradictory to the actual secondary claim, and saying that if we are together, we can accomplish more. When the claim actually kind of says the opposite. Another example he uses that we don't ask our neighbors to borrow supplies as much, which is not necessarily true. Like, it's kind of hypothetical because I still have stuff, like borrow stuff from my neighbors and and like they borrow stuff back. His third secondary claim is our lack of trust in neighbors hinders our ability to serve each other in times of need. One of his examples is that his closest family member is 35 minutes away, which is kind of relevant because that would just give another reason to because 35 minutes isn't too far away from a nearest family member, so that kind of add to the lack of trust. Also, one of the examples is that he has a story about survivors of Hurricane Ike and how they came together to help each other out. But the only problem with the story is that it also contradicts his secondary claim. And in conclusion, the speech on the sustainable neighborhoods begins with an ambiguous claim, and the secondary claims are backed by contradictory support. So therefore, the speech is not viable.
All right, well, you make a big deal about the issue of sustainable, and then we never come back to it. Why is it important that it's vaguely defined? Does that affect the size of the houses, or the distance that people live from one another, or the amount of power that they use? I don't know why it undermines the advocate's claim, and you need to explain that a little bit more. Your signpost on the first point was clear. What's the impact of your argument, though, that says, well, they don't provide a source for how many more people are going to be entering the housing market in the next 20 years? You know, it's an okay question to ask, but let's suppose that they did provide a source. You now don't have an answer other than the question. So it would be a good idea to have an argument based, especially if you have some reason to believe that that number is not accurate. I can't imagine that that number doesn't sound accurate given the growth in the population and how many people will be looking for homes. I thought your better argument was the next one that came up, that there's a substantial demand for houses that are smaller, and you've got an explanation on that, and that I thought you did a good job on. So that part, I think, works better for you. On the next issue, you say that the quote actually contradicts the point, but you need to explain a little bit more clearly how it contradicts that point. I think you're expecting us to make the same inference that you do, and if the advocate didn't make the same inference, why are we going to make the same inference? You have to explain why the inference that you're making is the legitimate one. You know, the challenge on the hypothetical with the neighbors and borrowing something, that was okay. I mean, that's a personal example, but I don't remember that the advocate's point was any stronger than the one that you have there. The last point's pretty clearly labeled. You do the same thing with the evidence, again, challenging its relevance and suggesting that the Hurricane Ike example contradicts the point, and I'm wondering, okay, well, how does it do that? So I'm not sure that it helps you that much. The thing that I thought was strongest about your argument is that after everything, you give us a nice summary about how you're trying to put all this stuff together to reach a contradictory conclusion. And even if we didn't follow everything that you were saying earlier, I think you're giving us a pretty clear shot here at the end as to what it is we're supposed to have gotten from the argument. All right, thank you.